Boys, get in. Open the door now! Get down here now, stairs!
6:30 a.m.
Downstairs now!
in a residential street on the outskirts of Manchester. An early call from the illegal money lending team. Backed by officers from Greater Manchester Police, they arrived mob-handed to prevent any evidence being destroyed.
So I'm arresting you on suspicion of illegal money lending and money laundering. You don't have to say anything, but may I have your defence? You don't mention one question. We've had an allegation that you're lending money to people and collecting it back with interest, and that's why I'm here. What we're going to do is we're going to look through the phone. If there's nothing on it, then that's the end of it, isn't it? Mate, what I'm telling you, you've been arrested, right, on suspicion of illegal money lending and money laundering. If you haven't done it, there's no problem, you'll be investigated, and that'll be the end of the matter.
Wait until we get solicited and then we'll sort it.
Okay. It is an offence for you to refuse to give me the PIN number for your phone when asked. I'm just telling you.
I've never been in trouble with the police for nothing, so can I speak to a solicitor?
This is part of an ongoing operation against suspected illegal money lenders who not only demand extortionate rates but sometimes use violence and intimidation. And the fear is, with the cost of living crisis, this is a problem that is getting worse. Before this year, the most common reason for borrowing was one-off expenses, white goods or a car breakdown. Since January, according to the latest figures shared with Channel 4 News, half of loan shark victims in England borrow to pay for the basics, like fuel and food. Tony Quigley, the man in charge of the morning raid, has headed up this illegal money lending team for 2 decades and says he's alarmed by what he's seeing.
Clearly, with the energy rise, that's just going to get worse. The pressure that is being applied is immense. What we're seeing is, the phone calls, the knocking on the door, the constant harassment for what was initially a small debt. And we've seen people that have taken £250 off an illegal lender and ended up owing £90,000 according to the illegal lender because they've doubled it and doubled it and doubled it and doubled it.
These are not normal people. They're dangerous.
Billy, who lives in a remote part of South Wales, says he knows just what price the loan sharks can exact for their service. And it's paid not just in money, but fear.
They opened the door themselves, made their way up, dragged me out of bed, put me in, I presume, either the back of a car or transit or something. I was driven to a mountain, handed a shovel, told to dig.
He was told to jump in the hole and warned that that's where he would end up if he paid late again. And the threats didn't stop there.
And he says, "You've got 2 kids, haven't you?" And I says, "Yeah." He said, "It'd be a shame if somebody run over one of them, wouldn't it?"
Billy says he borrowed more than £30,000 from loan sharks over the years. He says he understands what it's like to feel there's no other choice, but begs people not to do it.
They don't care about you. They don't care about your kids. They don't care what's in your home, what's not in your home, because they'll take everything you've got. And then some. Don't use loan sharks, please. I'm begging you. Please don't use loan sharks, please. Please, I'm begging you.
While illegal lending is an age-old crime, the methods used are moving with the times. Investigators say social media is being used by loan sharks to find, threaten and control people in debt. Here's one exchange from a recent investigation by the illegal money lending team. The names have been changed.
"I know someone, but he charges more than you borrow, and he comes round if you don't pay. He's very, very last resort. I heard someone didn't pay him. Next thing, they had a broken kneecap. Scary. He might come, or his boys. I've just seen Danny, and he wanted to send some lads round and give you a talking. He was fuming and going off on one. I told him you'd pay tomorrow."
So, first of all, it depended on how much you want to borrow, and then we would go through the normal checks.
This is where the government want people to turn to instead of loan sharks. There are credit unions like this one in Stockport all over the country that aim to offer safe borrowing for people who would struggle to get credit elsewhere. But there are strict rules over what they can lend money for, and the absolute necessities of day-to-day life aren't covered.
We're getting people coming to us for basics that we've never previously had applications for. So people are wanting basics like gas and electricity, they want to borrow for that. Food even, we've had food applications. We can't lend for that reason. It's not responsible lending. If we lend for food or gas and electricity, they will consume it this week, and then what happens next week?
And what are your other worries about those people to whom you have to say no?
Well, we signpost them where we can to various agencies. The local council has got various funds that they can help with, and we do send people there. But we do also know that some of them will go elsewhere, and elsewhere will mean a lender that's not a responsible lender, and it could well be loan sharks.
And have you had people come and tell you that they have borrowed from illegal lenders?
Yes, we get that regularly.
And yet, despite the warnings, for some, there still feels like no other option. So you're considering an illegal money lender?
Yeah, I would.
This is Tara, a mother of 4 who has fled domestic abuse and says she can't see her children go hungry.
Because if I haven't got the money to feed and heat my house and my children, in 2020, you just don't expect it. And if that's the route I've got to take, then that's the route I'll have to take and follow the consequences after. There isn't no option.
But the consequences can often be quite bad, can't they?
Oh, yeah, I have read stories, yeah, and obviously I've heard stories, and I understand that. But people have got to understand, if I need to feed my children, this isn't going to a loan shark because I want to go on holiday, or because I want to decorate my house, or because I want to go and get the false nails done. It's because I've got to feed my children. I've got to feed, and I have hot water and just the basic essentials of life. I'm not doing it because I'm being greedy or because I want nicer things. I'm doing it to survive.
The early morning raid on suspected loan sharks is almost over. Investigations into this case will continue. The government told us it is determined to crack down on the illegal lenders themselves. But this is only part of the equation. What to do about increasing numbers of increasingly desperate people who need money to survive right now and will go anywhere to get it. Well, to talk more about this, I'm joined by Tony Sales, a reformed fraudster who co-founded the crime prevention group We Fight Fraud, and by Dr. Nicola Harding, who's a criminologist at Lancaster University. Thank you, both of you, for coming in. Nicola Harding, first, you've been studying this problem for a long time. Give us a sense of scale and how it's changing through this cost of living crisis.
Yeah, I think the cost of living crisis has definitely impacted on the amount of people that are needing to go and seek out illegal money lenders or loan sharks. I think the thing that's key with this year in particular and the move is that we're seeing the demographic change of who would have thought that it was very vulnerable people, maybe with addictions, and perhaps we would have thought that them ending up where the loan shark would have been as a result of their personal decisions or bad financial planning, things like that. But what we're seeing now is that more and more people who are waged, they're in employment, whether part or full-time, are needing to, if not already engage with loan sharks, then moving towards thinking that that may be their only option for a variety of reasons.
And we were told that they were often asking for the money to pay for food or electricity bills.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in our research we've seen, we're still currently researching, so we're still seeing the real impact of that cost of living, and that is that in our research 90% of the people that we spoke to cited energy bills, food, day-to-day expenses over things like holidays or Christmas.
And Tony Sales, you've spent a lot of time talking to the victims of loan sharks. What do they tell you this process is like for them?
Yeah, I mean, so they're kind of, there's a lot of people really using these loan sharks everywhere that are victims. They continue to become victims of violence, of threats of violence, but they have no other option than to use these people. They're stuck. Where else can they go to lend this money? And that's the problem that we're seeing.
I mean, we talked to Billy in the film, horrifying threats of violence. He talked exactly about that business of being trapped and not being able to get out. Is he an extreme case, or is this happening a lot?
I mean, from our research, we're seeing it happen quite a bit. So it seems that you get these kind of people in all the areas that we've been going across the UK, and there may be one or two of them, and of course they use the fear of violence against one person, and of course that word spreads like wildfire, and before you know it, everyone's scared and paying back the money.
So the threats work?
Yeah, the threats work, definitely the threats work, yeah, and they're real, and they're not just idle threats either for those people. They actually impact on those people. As you can see with Billy, he's terrified because of it.
And we were told that part of the difficulty in finding and prosecuting loan sharks is because of the reluctance of people to come forward, that they regard it as some sort of community service. I mean, do you understand that? Because it sounds very strange.
Yeah, I mean, both Nick and I come from those backgrounds where previously we would have used doorstep lenders, illegal lenders to borrow money. And so we understand that now the cost of living crisis is increasingly pushing more and more of those people to use it for electricity, for food, for school uniforms, for things that they've never had to use that stuff for before. They're using it more than ever.
I think ultimately when there's no other options, you've still got to survive, and that insecurity of not knowing, will I get paid this week? How much will I get paid? Will I be sanctioned by benefits? That insecurity keeps you in a place where it's always got to be in your mind that who am I going to turn to? And obviously, if that's the person that's helping you out when you are at your most desperate, you're not going to turn on them. So therefore, it's difficult to go to the illegal money lending teams or other places to get help because you don't want to turn on the hand that feeds you.
You might actually need that person, however horrific the process is.
Yeah, especially if you're living in, deprived times. Why would you want to get rid of that person that's going to help you?
I mean, the reality is there will always be people the banks won't lend to, even the credit unions. We heard them say, we're strictly regulated. If people come to us looking to pay for food or fuel, we can't do that. So what are the options? How do we solve this problem?
I think it needs to be sorted in a much longer term way. Society credit reference agencies, traditionally, we have to wait 6 years. For a lot of these people would have had poor credit because they've not been able to pay the bills in the past. But some people get themselves back up the ladder and nowadays could use those credit facilities. Maybe we need to change the way we view people in that way and just cut down the time a little bit.
Because you struggled yourself,
yeah,
you're
I've been
reformed fraudster,
yeah.
But you struggled yourself to sort out.
Yeah, many times. And once those credit, they affect you. You can't get credit anywhere. You need to survive. It's just inevitable, and more people will turn to these lenders.
I think the key thing as well is that when you are talking about the most vulnerable who we would have traditionally thought would be using these, is that there is a safety net within welfare benefits systems. There's budgeting loans and there's crisis loans and things like that, although they are less available now. However, when you move to the new demographic of people who are waged, so they're in full or part-time work, they're maybe not getting a top-up from the government because they don't meet the criteria. Maybe they're a single person or a single-person household. They don't have that safety net, they don't have access to the resources of the welfare benefits system, and they're then potentially excluded from credit. So where do they turn to? If the greater they're excluded from credit, they're going to have to look to other options because that safety net simply isn't there for them. And I think that as the credit, as we see the cost of living crisis worsen, these people are going to be most affected, and they're people who potentially wouldn't have ever thought that they would need to turn to an illegal lender before.
Really, really briefly, the government are saying that, they're determined to crack down on the loan sharks themselves. That's only part of the equation, presumably.
Yeah, definitely, and it's going to be so hard to get to those type of people because no one's going to want to tell them who they are. So, as long as they're getting to the right people to solve the right problems, then, but it's a hard task.
Tony Sales and Dr. Nicola Harding, thanks so much for talking to us tonight. Thank you. And if you've been affected by the issues we've been discussing, you can go to channel4.com/support, where you'll find a link to stop loan sharks who can provide further support.